watching Vision Plus. We are at the U.S. Space and Rocket Center for International Women's Day, and this is part of the Women Information Network, which features the Global Women's Summit, one of 55 that are going on across the United States. We're excited about International Women's Day, and to celebrate even greater is Mrs. Alabama, Dallas Teague. And she's not only Mrs. Alabama. Tell me some of the other awards you got.
Well, Bonnie, it's amazing because, it's only like the Lord to promote you when you're not expecting it, right? Well, this week, not only is we're celebrating, this wonderful event in Huntsville, the Global Women's Summit and International Women's Day, but I was actually found out that I became an ordained minister this week. So, with my passion to help women be their best personally, professionally, and spiritually, every time I try to take off the labels that the world has put on me, God gives me the ones I need to perfect His mission.
Well, tell us a little bit about you and what you're doing now. I happen to have known this sweet, precious Dallas Teague for many years, part of the National Speakers Association. I was president of the National Speakers Association of Alabama, and you were too, weren't you?
I don't think I ever made president. I was president of professional training and development, but I definitely was a member and certainly a fan of yours.
Well, let's find out about your books and what you're doing on television and other places now, Dallas.
Well, actually, I have a television segment called Everyday Heroes. We're looking to take that to the national platform, and there are networks getting in touch with me right now, kind of vying over that opportunity, so we're excited about that. And it's about real people making a real difference. It's really about lifting those stories to be encouraging and inspirational to others. I do have my own personal story called Finding Dallas, a personal journey through childhood abuse to the glory of God's plan.
We want to hear that.
Well, Miss Bonnie, most people wouldn't look at me and think, oh, my goodness, she's walked through something. But, I have, I guess I could say that my story, when I go out and tell people about it and I'm willing to be vulnerable and share that with them, then they realize, too, that they can get through their tragedy. Because we all go through something.
Well, this has to do with your mother, for one thing. Tell us about your childhood and then how it grew into the hero that you're living now.
Well, actually, my mother, for everything that she did wrong, she did so much right, I really love her, and I wouldn't be the person today if it wasn't for her. So I have to say that first and foremost. The sad thing about that, it was that my mother struggled from bipolar disorder and schizophrenia. And the reality is, I think it's because, honestly, she didn't understand how much she was loved by our Creator. I think if she understood that she wasn't her mistakes, that she understood how precious and special she was, that she was truly a princess in the eyes of the Most High, High King, that she would have made different choices. And unfortunately, she didn't make good decisions, and she's been in an assisted living facility since I was in my 20s. So, and I'm not going to tell you how old I am now, but that's been a long time ago. But, the reality is that with my story, the things that I've been through, what I realized that is being that child in that situation, it was the little girl in me that never had the chance to experience joy. And so I really had to do a lot of spiritual healing, emotional healing, and that's why I'm really on a path to help people, personally, professionally, and spiritually, because quite frankly, when we can't bring the light into those places of pain, it's very challenging. It shows up in our bodies, it shows up in our relationships, and it really keeps us from the joy that God so much wants us to have.
One of the things that you're doing is helping people to understand that we don't have to stay in the pain. So how are you doing that?
I really believe it goes back to understanding the finished work of the cross. Oftentimes when we stay in that pain and we don't allow Jesus to speak to our hearts and heal those places of wounds, I often say that, the power of the cross, there's so much healing that. What Jesus did and He died for was for our freedom today. But when we don't know how to appropriate that, when we don't know how to invite Him in and how to say, no, I'm going to leave that at the cross, that today I choose light and love. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's like we are emotionally in slavery, even within the church today. People that call themselves Christians because we don't know how to apply that, and we stay sort of in this perpetual pattern of illness and sickness and things of that nature. So it's really teaching people about that truth, and then helping them be able to, what I like to say, we might be pierced, but we won't be wounded. Remember when Christ showed Thomas his hands and his wounds in his hands, and he said, touch them. We'll be able to then share our story with others where they can actually feel the touch, but yet it won't hurt us anymore because we won't be wounded. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. And you have a ministry now. In addition to a television show and going global with all the things you're doing, tell us about your ministry. And by the way, I am a certified minister also.
So, see, it takes one to know one, right? I think we're all on mission, by the way, and I think we don't have to have a degree to be certified to be a minister. I think that all of us can be a light in our community, and like you said, going global, it's much easier now, and love can go anywhere. But you were asking me about my ministry. It's called Jesus Knocking with Dallas, and the way it came about was that I realized that, as the scripture says, knock on the door, right? And when you seek, you find. And I thought, Jesus, if the knocking, Jesus is knocking on our heart. And it's not my job to convince people who the Son of God is or who God is, but just to encourage them to seek, because if they seek, they will find.
Ask, seek, and knock. Well, how did it come about that you became Mrs. Alabama?
Well, interestingly enough, I was watching the Ms. America pageant and rooting for our current title holder. And I actually did a Google search, and I thought, I wonder if there's a pageant for people like me, girls that are a little older, or maybe older, or older, and then one that didn't require a talent or a bathing suit. Not that I have no talent, but I could wear a bathing suit, but I preferred not to. And I found the Ms. America pageant, and this pageant had started in 1997. And I reached out to the lady, and she had shared some information with me about the history. And so I just didn't think about it for a while. So in my prayer time and so forth, it just kept coming up a little bit. And she called me one day and said, Dallas, we are very impressed with you and think that you would be a great representative for Alabama. Would you consider the state title? Now, with this, you have to compete in the national pageant. She said, mind you, this is a real pageant. I mean, these are girls that have been in pageants a long time. Now, Dr. Bonnie, I am not a pageant girl. I didn't even know how to pivot. You know what I mean? For those, but I mean, I'm your class president, not your pageant girl. But the reality is the little girl in me, I think, that was told she never could. She wasn't good enough. She wasn't, all the things that she wasn't. That the Lord was truly trying to give me that opportunity to relive that dream. And put people in my life, just amazing people in my life that, that sponsored my dress, that coached me through some of the turns and all those things. And the reality of it is, the way it came about was, I just said, Lord, why would I want to put myself through something like this? I mean, what abuse? Why would I subject myself to being judged again, right? Who does that? So what I did was, in my prayer, I said, God, why? Really, why would I want to do this? And honestly, Dr. Bonnie, I was driving to a Bible study, and I just, in my mind's eye, I had a vision of Christ. I was bending down. He put a crown on my head, kissed me on the cheek, and said, you are good enough. And I just wept. I cried. The tears would not stop coming. And I said, Lord, if you can wear a crown for me, I can certainly wear one for you. And you know what? There was no choice. Wearing a crown for Christ was my platform. I was tested at the national pageant, and I'll talk more about that here at the Women's Summit. But of course, I'll have this in the book as well, some of these questions. So I certainly encourage people to come to my website and get my book. But, it's not popular to have a platform like wearing a crown for Christ. I mean, you can pretty much plan that you're going to be judged, But that's the reason why I was going. I knew why I was going. And I want you to know that the boldness of that, and I had people come up to me and say I was the reason that they signed up because of my platform. I had a young lady whose father had died of ALS, and she said that I was the reason that she came. She saw it as a sign and sent me a letter and asked me to be her spiritual mentor. So, we never know. And when the Lord, if it's something as silly as a pageant, and I'm not saying pageants are silly, but when we say why, we just have to say yes.
So amazing you said that, because I was reading Joshua 1 and 3, 7, 9, about be bold and very courageous. And I was asked to do this, be the director of the Global Women's Summit in several places, and in addition to Alabama. And I wanted the venue of the U.S. Space and Rocket Center. And I thought, the president is a woman, and she CEO, but she's in Baku, Azerbaijan, setting up another Space and Rocket Center up the area there. And it was so happened that a guy from Voice of America from Baku, Azerbaijan, stayed in our home as international missions volunteer for 11 years. I was. And so I thought, when it says in Joshua 1:9, it says, haven't I commanded you, be bold and very courageous? And I just said yes to this. I wanted to meet this unbelievable author from Dallas, and he was in front of a bunch of people, and I was sitting over at the side, and I thought, I am going to, that came to me again, be bold. Haven't I commanded you, be bold and very courageous? I went right up to him and said, I want an autograph for your book. And it was like the highlight of the whole time. And that sounds like kind of the way you did to become in the Mrs. Alabama pageant.
Yeah, absolutely, Bonnie. And we can't, when bold looks different for different people. For Olympian, bold looks different than what your bold was, what my bold was, what someone else's bold is, in different times in our lives. And so what's really interesting about this whole thing is, much like, again, I always say when beautiful moments happen like this, I always go, that's so God. I just go, that's so God. Because they're not consequences. They're not consequence. They're not happenstance, I believe in divine appointments, and I believe that, there's a tapestry in life. And that as we walk through different things and we meet different people, the Lord knows all along what the plans He has for us, right? Scripture says that. We just sometimes get in a rush or get frustrated and don't enjoy the journey along the way. And but what I wanted to share with you is that actually this year, through a colleague, I shouldn't say colleague, a pageant sister. I can't believe I would say that, a pageant sister. Wow, that's funny. But she is, and another wonderful, relationship that I met along the journey, shared with me about another pageant called the World's Tourism Pageant. And so, amazingly enough, the lady contacted me, and I said, well, the state of Alabama is taken. I said, I want to continue on my platform about wearing a crown for Christ, which I don't have to do a pageant to do that, of course, because we know we all wear a crown. But she said, well, what about the title of Ms. World's United Nations Tourism? Well, this is what's funny, is that I always wanted to work for the United Nations, and I have a degree in tourism, and I'm going global. So there you go.
It's such a wonderful thing. Dr. Paula Bellingham actually spoke to the United Nations about International Women's Day and what's happening across the world. 377 live events in 2011, the 100th birthday of the International Women's Day, and was hardly even active in the United States. 152 other countries. So I think we need to catch up.
It's about time we do, right?
I want to thank you very much for coming and taking time out of your lunch hour to be here for the interview for Vision Plus, and for honoring us with your incredible story that you've been telling And I want you now to give your website so our wonderful, marvelous videographer, Thaddeus Brooke, can actually get it on the screen.
Absolutely. It's DallasTeague.com or Jesus-knocking.com. Jesus-knocking.com. So it's one and the same. So I would love for you to join me on my weekly devotional blog and also my Bible studies, because, you know, it doesn't matter where you live. You can always access some inspiration, and if I could be a part of your journey, it would be a blessing.
It's so wonderful to blog, too. I did one 3 or 4 years ago. I looked in my phone today, and someone else had said, "We just love your blog, and I've got it put on my blog." So you never know what is going to happen years down the road. Tell me about your books again before we leave.
Well, of course, the latest one is Finding Dallas, A Personal Journey Through Childhood Abuse to the Glory of God's Plan. And really, it's not, some people have said, "Oh my goodness, I was going to be so depressed." It's really about how we get through a struggle, no matter what it is. The others are Professionally Polished, a business etiquette book to help people from any age, really. And it's about those things that we're not learning anymore and to help us be successful. Executive Etiquette Power, which is another addition to that. And I actually have home study courses and coaching opportunities, so people can work one-on-one with me as well.
I want to be one of those people. Well, we want to thank you very much. We're going to hear more about the International Women's Day and the Global Women's Summit, thanks to Thaddeus Brooks. Bless your heart for watching.
Believe it or not. What about that one? Now, the funny thing about that is I say, we have times in our life where we just kind of want to be lay around and just kind of relax and rest, right? And then there's those times in our life where we're driven. I can do it, I can do it, I can do it, right? Isn't that cute? I give up, I give up. Yes, okay, I'm all in. There's some things that never change, right? Look at this. That's me in 3rd grade, future president of the United States. This is me at 20-something. That's me in my 30s. Well, you don't see me in a scarf today, but here's the deal. This is my scarf area. Am I addicted or what? Now, this is the thing, is that there's going to be something in our lives, right? But we've got to find a system that works for us. This was such a blessing to me. My husband got me that for Christmas. I was like, organization, how great. But the reality is that even though there are things in our lives that, will remain in our lives, how do we make it work for us? Don't see it as an obstacle. Ask yourself, how can I do it? When we ask ourselves the question, guess what? Our brain will help us come up with a solution. It's funny because I just love the synergy of all this because, when you guys were asked to move down front, it was said you're going to be out of your comfort zone, right? It's where magic happens, isn't it? I do a segment on ABC 3340 in Birmingham, and it's called Everyday Heroes, Real People Making a Real Difference. I interviewed a gentleman recently, and he does work with inner city youth, and he talks about the window of these children and how really you have to touch them at such a young age because, it's a critical time. A lot can happen between the ages of 6 and 16, right? And he said, I'm the whitest dude. I don't know how to rap. He goes, but you know what? I don't look called to work in inner city, but yet I love those kids, and they know it. And I just encourage people to step outside their comfort zone. You may not be called to work, in the inner city. You may be called to work with your neighbor. You may be called to go to the senior center. The Lord is going to put in your heart your passion. You understand what I'm saying? Because you have what we call, a USP, or should I call a USP. Has anybody ever been in sales here? Raise your hand. Have you heard of the unique selling proposition? Okay, well, this happens to me quite frequently, but one night in my dreams, I wake up and I write down USP, unique soul perspective. It's your unique soul perspective. Because we have a journey, we have a life, we have a story. And nobody can see through your experience, can they? But yet, your perspective, coupled with your talents and your skills, which Paula talked about, helps you find your life purpose. And that's what the win is all about. Isn't that cool? You have a USP. You tell somebody, hey, I have a USP. And they go, what is that? And you go, my unique soul perspective. See? Cool is that? So when you have beliefs that no longer serve you, you know, when my belief of I'm not good enough or I'm too short or whatever that may have been, because there have been a lot, right? It doesn't work for me anymore. Because now I know that regardless of how tall I am, how big my hair is, you know, whatever that is for the given day, that I am here today. What am I going to do with the rest of my life from this moment on? What can I do today? Because we're not guaranteed tomorrow, are we? So, you guys have heard of the KISS method, right? Tell me, somebody say it. What's the KISS method? All right, well, let me tell you what my KISS is. Keep it simply savvy. Right? Because, see, I don't say anything negative. It's just not in my DNA. It's not in my fingerprints. You know, why? Life is too short, right? So let's talk about what that is, because I really feel like if we think about a kiss, right, and that's an embrace, that's showing love to someone else, correct? But think about this as a way to sort of model your behavior or what you show to others. And I think if we follow this, we'll really get ourselves out of a lot of sticky situations, okay? You ready for it? The big reveal. Drum roll. All righty, so does my behavior offend, insult, ignore, or interrupt another person? Can I say, hello, cell phone? Right? What about the next one? Would I consider this behavior rude if someone else did it? It's interesting how we'll see someone do something and we'll go, oh my gosh, did you see that? And then we turn around and do the very same thing, don't we? Right? What did Miss Bonnie say? You have a mirror, correct? Sometimes we need to look in that mirror and say, you know, I love you. You messed up today, but that's all right. Because guess what? It's okay. You know, I want you to do me a favor right now. Look at the person closest to you and look at them and just say, you're not perfect. Okay? All right. And now I want you to do something. Point to yourself and go, I'm not perfect. And I want you to hug yourself and say, and that's okay. That's right. See, perfection is actually a tool of the enemy. The enemy of our brain. Now, being excellent is different. Being our best. That's why I call my company Make Your Best Impression. And that's why I teach business etiquette skills, because I don't want anyone to be judged for something that they don't know. I was a card-carrying kid, ladies. Free lunch card. I was the class president and got free lunch. And I'll tell you the day that I decided to eat and take the free lunch. You know what I'm saying? But it was hard because they didn't make the cards equal to others. Everybody knew you were a free lunch kid. You were on government assistance, right? But what I'm telling you is that when I decided, you know what, that's okay. My mom works hard. She does the best she knows how to do. I work a job and I'm going to school and I'm going to and I'm going to eat. Can I just tell you that that was an empowering moment for me? It was scary, but let me tell you, sometimes when we're the most vulnerable is when we are the strongest. And in fact, I will tell you that Jesus was the most vulnerable when he was the strongest. Okay, let me move on. Okay, so here's the next thing. Have I assessed the situation? Did I think about it before I posted that thing to Facebook, before I made that phone call, before I said ugly words to someone? You know? Before I let somebody have it because they deserved it. Why don't, instead of doing that, pause, send a prayer to them, send love to them, and just see how the situation manifests. Does that make sense? Give it some time. Can we have a hand clap for that? So how many of you have heard of lagniappe? Lagniappe is a term in Louisiana. Remember, I grew up in Mobile, which is part of the French territory, and and so New Orleans was very close to me. But lagniappe is a term they use to mean a little something extra. So, for example, if you went to a bakery, instead of getting a dozen donuts, they'd slip an extra one in there and give you 13. Wouldn't it be great if we all adopted a spirit of lagniappe? What can we do that's just a little something extra that's not expected? You know? I know last night we were in a reception and, there was a gift given. I remember thinking, saying to the person that received it, "Oh, how special." And she said, "What a blessing." You see, when we don't expect something, it's a blessing to us, isn't it? But yet, when have we ever truly been told to expect anything? Because that's taking things for granted. But if we would consider every day as a blessing and as a gift, and the people that we meet, because one thing, what we never get back is time. You being here today and dedicating your time to being here, that's an asset you never get back. It's the most precious thing. Never forget that. Never forget that. So servant leadership, and this is exactly what was mentioned earlier, and I would have to tell you, we did not collaborate about what we were talking about, and that's really funny. Not really, so God. But anyway, invest in others. We were just speaking about that. Think of others first. Give loyalty to get loyalty. Because you see, when we expand the heart and we open up that space for love, guess what happens? We receive it, don't we? When we least expect it. And exactly how we need it. It all begins with you. It all begins with you and how you want to live your life. We have one life. A lot of people will be asked, they'll say, "Well, would you do it differently?" And many people will say no. Because at the end of the journey or the end of the season in their life, they say, "I learned so much."
At Lexus of Huntsville, luxury is seen throughout the dealership. We have earned the Elite of Lexus Award 8 years straight because our staff is committed to giving you the best overall experience. Visit our service department with any questions you may have. Let our sales team show you our newest vehicles in the showroom. And feel free to take a break in our customer lounge. Lexus of Huntsville, where you get much more for less than you might expect, on the corner of University Drive and Providence, Maine in Huntsville.